Yonsei University established the Institute for Global Engagement and Empowerment, or IGEE, in 2017 to promote sustainable development. And it was established with our founding honorary director, the 8th UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Since then, we have organized the annual Global Engagement and Empowerment Forum on Sustainable Development, or GEEF, GEEF, a world major conference in which we strive to accomplish the UN SDGs. In addition to the annual GEEF conference, we have hosted a seminar series on the most urgent SDG issues, which we've named GEEF for All. So far, we have covered the following topics: peace and human rights in Myanmar, and ESG of the semiconductor industry, and so on. The recent GEEF for All seminar was about world peace and climate action, featuring Colombian President Ivan Duque Marquez and UNSG Ban Ki-moon. Recently, interest in investment considering environmental, social, and governance factors has increased rapidly, and there has been a flood of discourse about ESG. However, we have many unanswered questions. Are we really sure that ESG has been established as a new standard? Or will it be another passing fad? That means, is ESG really sustainable? At the same time, what are corporate social responsibilities in the post-COVID-19 era? 최근 들어서 여러분들이 잘 아시는 것처럼 ESG를 고려한 투자에 대한 관심이 급격하게 늘어나고, 또 ESG에 대한 많은 대화들이, 또 이론들이 넘쳐나고 있습니다. 하지만 아직도 우리에게는 대답되지 않은, 해결되지 않은 여러 질문들이 있습니다. 정말 ESG가 새로운 기준으로 만들어졌을까요? 또 다른 지나가는 유행 같은 것은 아닐까요? 정말 ESG는 그 자체가 서스테이너블 할까요? 또한 우리가 경험하고 있는 이 포스트 코로나 시대에서 기업들의 사회적인 책임은 어떤 것이 되어야 될까요? Today, Professor Rebecca Kim Jung-hee 교수님 is with us. She is a world expert in CSR, Cooperative Social Responsibility, 기업의 사회적인 책임, CSV, Creating Shared Values, 우리말로 공유가치 창출, and ESG. And she is a professor at Li츠메이칸, Asia Pacific University in Japan. And she received her PhD in Management Research from the University of Strathclyde, and she previously taught at the University of Nottingham, Malaysia, University of Strathclyde, and University of Edinburgh, UK, on business ethics, management across cultures, management of international relationships, and CSR, and so on. Prior to entering academia, she worked in the fields of foreign diplomacy, government, and NGOs, and CSR consulting business as a professional of international relations for 12 years. Professor Kim is particularly interested in research on international and comparative CSR and CSB, inclusive leadership, and many other topics, and she has published widely in leading journals. I have a very good news. Can you see this book? She is the author of her recent book, 기업의 사회적 책임이 코로나를 만났을 때. If you leave a short review of today's participation and your phone number in the chat window, we will send you a copy of the book through a lottery. 좋은 소식이 있습니다. 김정인 교수님께서 한국에서 최근에 내신 기업의 사회적 책임이 코로나를 만났을 때라는 책이 제가 소개드립니다. 여러분들이 채팅창에 여러분들의 오늘 참여에 대해서 말씀 나눠주시고 폰 넘버를 주시면 추첨을 통해서 여러분들께 보내드리도록 하겠습니다. I'm so happy to have Professor Kim here at the GEEF for All seminar. The title of today's talk is When CSR Meets ESG Opportunities, What We Need to Know. Professor Kim, what do we need to know? Please welcome Professor Rebecca 김정희 교수님.
감사합니다. Thank you, Professor Song, and thank you, 연세 IGEE. Let me share my slide. Wait a moment, please. Is it fine? Okay. Thank you for all, especially I truly appreciate to IGEE, Institute for Global Engagement in Empowerment, and Yonsei University for hosting this precious virtual gathering. And as Professor Song introduced, I'm Korean. 저는 이제 한국 사람이고, now I'm working in Japan University in Beppu, and quite famous for onsen. So Ri츠메이칸 Asia Pacific University. Today, let me try to share with you about the story and flow of CSR, and then CSV and ESG. So I hope you enjoy my discussion, especially the comparative study between global phenomenon and then what about Asia and Korea. Looking forward to your critical questions and discussions after my sharing. So let me start from the global CSR. It's a big issue and a very, very complex issue. But when you observe during these days, many leading, especially global corporations website, you can see they have to discuss on CSR, although very different themes and ideas over there. So even corporate citizenship like this. So why? At first, I would like to ask you the question, why? To be honest, a lot of people, they criticize on companies' approach towards CSR. Let me try to share two things. The first one is CSR is like the department store. What is this? You only try to exhibit, or you mean show up the good things in front of others as only the marketing strategy. So there is no genuine CSR over there. What is this second main criticism over there? The professor of UC Berkeley, Vogel, mentioned CSR is mainly used by leading corporations, especially in Europe and America, as crisis scandal response. Indeed. And then many corporations, especially, you can see a lot of irresponsibility or malpractice of leading corporation, and the big pressure and the boycott around the globe, boycott Nike, IKEA, Gap, Rio Tinto, and the Starbucks more and more. So CSR is mainly used not as a way of vision and mission, but as a way of crisis scandal response. CSR, what is this, and why globalization triggers the question on corporate social responsibility? So this is a very huge topic. So these are some examples and themes in relation to CSR, such as global supply chain management. So for example, you mean food, sustainable food from production, and then you mean delivery, consumption, and disposal. All are quite related to CSR and the CSR themes. And also now I understand in Korea, you are talking a lot on ESG and the ESG report and the ESG investment definitely is coming from the CSR or strategic CSR. And then PPP, a lot of leading international companies, they would like to work with the local government over there. We call this PPP, human rights issues, sweatshop issues, and then child labor issues, and also work-life balance issues, and the economic crisis issues. Especially during this COVID era, many people, they are talking about what's the role and what's the leadership of businesses and the fair trade issues as well, and more. Also, the power of IT and social media as CSR to be disseminated around the globe. So I did discuss this one in my book, my recent book. This is my first contribution to Korean young generation and Korean society. So power of IT has asked people or asked business to think about what is the real responsibility in this IT world. And the trust matters, to be honest, here and there. This is not the problem of Korea, but the problem of around the globe. People, they don't trust business and they don't trust politics. So let me share one example. When I had the interview with a share person in the UK, and he said he started his work in share 1969. At the time when share said their views and ideas toward the society, people they trust and they support share's idea for the society. However, during these days, nobody trusts the business and they trust more media or in India, and the NGOs like this. So there is big, very critical issue toward the business trust, lack of trust. And then also consumers, they have been changing their views to buy the product. Although this is a little bit expensive, but ethical and sustainable consumers, they try to buy organic food, for example, and eco-friendly cars like this. So consumers has been changed. So we can see a lot of reasons over there. And then by having this one, a lot of debate and discussion regarding CSR. So what kind of discussion over there? The first discussion is CSR is oxymoron. So there are not or cannot be social responsibility in business. What does that mean? So how the business, especially for example, and then the tobacco industry or tobacco business will produce tobacco for young generation. And the military goods company will produce bombs and military goods to kill the people of other countries. Energy company, oil company, who give very negative impact to the global warming. And the pharmaceutical company will use animal tests to sell their product. And then fast food company will sell very unhealthy food to young generation. So how this kind of company, they can say about social responsibility? This is oxymoron. So a lot of discussions over there. And then one of the key or quite popular, discussion on corporate social responsibility is Friedman and Freeman twist. And then, yeah, I think it's a kind of half and half. Milton Friedman and the recipient of Nobel Prize in Economics scientist, and then He said that there is no such a thing free lunch. So it means the social responsibility of a business is just to increase its profit. Whereas Edward Freeman said the main goal of corporate social responsibility is to create value for key stakeholders. So Milton Friedman said, basic idea is managers, they can concern only for satisfying consumers, maximizing profit, and then compliance with regulations and rules, and pay the tax to government. Politicians, you should take care of the people and society. Whereas Freeman's stakeholder theory is there are two things, and the one is instrumental stakeholder theory. What is this? If you take care of or listen to the stakeholders' view, it will make you to maximize the shareholder return. So this is really good for you, CSR as an instrument. And the other stakeholder theory is normative. You should be ethical, although this is not so much related to maximizing profit or maximizing shareholder return. I understand one of the favorite ideas or theories by business people is Carroll's four-part model of corporate social responsibility. It said there are some kind of hierarchies in terms of responsibility. The first one is economic responsibility. It's required by the society. So if the company, they make or they maximize profit, after that, they go to the second level. You mean legal responsibility, ethical, and then philanthropy. So there is a low hierarchy like this. But from my observation with Professor Jeremy Moon in Copenhagen University, it's not. So here in Asia, especially Asian capitalist society, you are talking much more on ethics, ethical responsibility. So although you are really good in philanthropy or making profit, but as long as you are not ethical, you are irresponsible. So you can see a lot of cases, especially here in Korea, in Japan, and then in China or India as well. So if you are not ethical, it means you will lose your face. Another theme in relation to CSR is sustainable management, 지속가능 경영. So there are triple bottom lines. So beyond the economic bottom line, corporations, they should consider sustainable management by have the lens, this kind of triple lens, social, environment, and economic. So my case study company Share, they began reporting this triple bottom line lens voluntarily as a first in the world, 1997. And the other one is after this sustainable management discussion, but Michael Porter, one of the management gurus, especially in terms of strategic management, so what? It should be linked to business strategy. So CSR as a competitive advantage. It means CSR is an unavoidable trend to gain social legitimacy and maybe linked to the creation of a competitive advantage. The quality of business environment in the location or locations where they operate. So the discussion over there, CSR like this. However, strategic CSR transformed quite recently by Michael Porter, another management theme or a fancy theme. And then Professor Song mentioned that this may be management fad, creating shared value issues. I know in Korea, many companies are talking on creating shared value, and they use this one of their main business strategy. So it comes from strategic CSR. So what is the CSV, creating shared value? As a set of policies and operating practices that enhance the competitiveness of a company while advancing economic and social conditions in the community in which it operates. So Michael Porter challenges the concept of capitalism, especially contemporary capitalism. Capitalism is on the seas, so we should change the capitalist system. And most companies, they are still remaining in stuck on a social responsibility mindset. However, we should get rid of this social responsibility mindset and go to the creating shared value ideas. So not all profit is equal. Profit involving a social purpose represent a higher form of capitalism. So let's go to the higher form of capitalism. That's what Michael Porter said. However, in Asia, so I try to compare the Japan and Korea and China and India and how they accept this CSV ideas in their local institutional context. To be honest, it's not like Michael Porter said. So how different it is. So let me try to share. To be honest, most CSR programs are strategic. And then don't press too much to cooperation to be so much strategic. It's a big burden. In terms of Asian CSV, you said Michael Porter business strategy focus. However, when it comes to Asia, it's much more business survival issues. And you mentioned about lucrative or profitable CSV strategy. However, here in Asia, we focus much more on ethical identity of business in relation to trust. The third one is business society pitted against each other, Michael Porter argues. However, in Asia, you are much more talking the business in the society, not pitted against each other. So the idea of CSV has been transformed in Asia like this. So if then how CSR in Asia can be discussed when it compared to the discussion of global CSR, let me give you just the two key points. So as you may observe, a lot of discussion on CSR, especially in global capitalist society, is CSR is business strategy to make a lot of profit, especially for the greatest good, for the greatest number of people. CSR should be there. However, in Asia, it's not. So in Asia, people do not accept CSR as a business strategy, especially hesitate to accept this idea. So when I discussed this one, interviewed this one with the public official in Japan government, if you mention CSR as a business strategy, it means you want to use CSR or social contribution in order to make a lot of money. Although we Japanese, we don't say about it, but we will not trust you. Because here in Asia, we have much more normative approach to CSR. In relation to Confucianism ethics, so as you may understand, and as you've learned here and there, I can observe some, you mean international student over there, maybe some student from China as well. So in Confucianism ethic, beyond the profit, we should be right. And 군자는 의로움에 밝고 소인은 이익에 밝다. 논어에 의하면 the gentleman understand righteousness and the buddhiman understand profit. So according to the Runyu, the seeking profit will endanger the harmony of the state. So as I mentioned to you just before, so CSR, because of CSR, you should remain your face. If not, you will lose your face. So this is a dilemma for multinational corporations. To be honest, this is the biggest dilemma. So I don't know how many business people, especially the multinational business people, you are here in this virtual gathering. This is one of the interview with the junior manager of UK business in Korea. I remember. And she said, we want to behave CSR and develop the Korean local community, not just giving money like a Santa Claus, because the company is not a Santa Claus. We view it as an investment, not a contribution or good behavior. It's not the social contribution. So even though internally we call it as an investment, when we talk to Koreans, we call it social contribution. So as far as I understand, many Western, you mean companies, when they come to Asia, they have dual strategies, although they don't say about that. And then this is quite, you mean, appropriate approach. Internally, they think this is a strategy, CSR is a strategy, but externally, when they communicate with the NGOs and with the Asian community, they said that this is a social contribution. The second challenge to the global CSR when it comes to Asia, Asian capitalist society, you are mentioning a lot on stakeholder perspective, right? However, in Asia, what do you think? In Asia, we already have the idea. So when I had the interview in Korea and Japan and in India and China, to be honest, stakeholder views is not new. For example, there are many. And then, for example, Korea, 홍익 인간 philosophy. This is Korean founding philosophy. Work and behave for the benefit of all mankind. In terms of Japan, when I arrived in Japan, this is the first philosophy, management philosophy that I've learned in Japanese business arena, Sampo Yoshi. What does that mean? When business establish their work here and there, they have to think three, not creating the benefit or maximizing shareholder return, but also three facts. One is it should give the benefit to the partner. So they are talking about supply chain very, very long time ago. And then second, it should be good to beneficial to the society overall. So the business should be good, beneficial to me and to my partner and to the overall society. That's why business should be there. So when I visited the Philippines, many dear Philippine friends, they are talking about bayanihan philosophy. What does that mean? You mean we should collaborate each other, community members, especially when we move from here to there. And this traditional philosophy becomes as a foundation of Philippines' approach to CSR. So 향야 품앗이 like this. So this kind of shareholder views is nothing new here in Asia, although we didn't transfer this as a word of stakeholder views or kind of things, but this is the key to survive in Asian market. If then by now you've talking a lot on this kind of dispersed idea on CSR, creating shared value, triple bottom line ethics like this. But during these days, I'm happy to witness emerging trends of discussion, very critical discussion on ESG. But this time we should be very, very holistic on this ESG stream, not as a fancy topic, not as a management fad, but as a true business direction, genuine business direction to the global society. So let me try to explain to you and share with you how ESG is nothing new. So how ESG has been created from the first social contributions, and then CSR, strategic CSR, and then CSV, and during these days, ESG. Why? So let me give you two ideas. And from my observation, I think why is ESG is a key, especially during these days for global business, is a kind of wake-up call to contemporary capitalist society. Indeed, as long as we are living in capitalist society, maximizing profit and the competitive advantage, these are two key themes in capitalism. However, from my observation, I could see, and I want to suggest to the business sector to think about the limit or shortcomings of capitalist society, capitalist market. So what are the 5 shortcomings? The first one is greed is good. It means as long as you make a lot of money, as long as you create the greatest good for the greatest number of people, it's ethical, it's responsible. However, the second one is quarterly capitalism. It means during these days, business they should report quarterly for the short term. However, the society asks business to go forward to sustainable management for the long term. So business they are in dilemma due to the shortcoming of capitalist society or capitalist market. The third limit, shortcoming of capitalism is elitist capitalism. As you may observe, the movie Parasite, the richer get richer and the poor get poorer. Especially during this COVID era, you can see the bigger, the power much more powerful. In America, during these days also, a lot of discussion on the big gap between the rich and the middle. So why this kind of a bigger gap among the society members in this capitalist society? The fourth one is volume-oriented capitalism. Economy of scale is the main theme of capitalism. So people, they try to assess the volume, quantity, not quality. However, as you may understand, the ESG is all about quality. So business people, they are in chaos. They are, in panic. So how we can transfer this qualitative data into this volume-oriented capitalist society? The fifth one is one-pattern capitalism. By all means, American capitalism leads a society to go like this. However, when it comes to Asia, very divergent and different capitalism phenomenon over there, according to their historical, cultural, and the institutional context. So business and society, they are in chaos. So they ask the future capitalism, and they ask the new role and the new assessment of business. That's why ESG especially are much more kind of active discussion in current stage, especially in this crisis stage, COVID era. So COVID pandemic asked people to rethink what is the real identity of capitalism? Because COVID pandemic suggests us to this kind of chaotic situation, such as breakdown of global supply chains. You can observe here and there. For example, the problem of such as toilet papers and the food and the face masks like this. So big problem of global supply chain. Second, many people, they lost their job here and there, and the virtual working conditions. And many people, they realize, all right, virtual working can be sometimes reliable as long as we trust each other, as long as employer has a concrete criteria for performance assessment. However, again, a lot of discussion on this one, whether virtual or in person. Most seriously, a lot of hate or phobia phenomenon here and there. Asian phobia or Asian hate phenomenon in America or in Europe, and the African phenomenon, you mean phobia in China, and the xenophobia in Africa, or xenophobia here in Asia, Japan, Korea, and then around Asia. So people, they hate each other and they blame for each other. So that's what pandemic asked us to have this kind of a very, very, unrecommendable situation. And the COVID also asked the stock market to think about investment, to think about the real investment and the real value of the stock. So also during these days, I observed also the discussion whether it goes to stakeholder or shareholder. So this is my current observation between Harvard professor, shareholder capitalism, should we go there? And Oxford University professor, no, stakeholder capitalism should be there. So can you remember my discussion on CSR? Still, the global market, they are talking about whether we have to go to stakeholder or shareholder. However, I would like to suggest you to go beyond stakeholder versus shareholder debate. So this is the time for us to discuss about this one. And they also UN, after the COVID and during COVID, they ask business, you should lead the world to overcome this crisis. So if then, how business we can lead this one? These are the first, the kind of issue of ESG to be transformed as a real management phenomena. So ESG is all about evaluation of CSR. You talked about CSR, this kind of things. However, can CSR be measured? This is a question to ESG. So when I worked in Korea as a CSR consultant, and I escorted the Korean business people here and there, UK, America. And the first and last question of business people is how we can measure it. And still the discussion is here. Finally, the global capitalist market, they try to measure CSR. They would like to measure the CSR. A lot of international standard and the guidelines over there. Even when you want to get into the EU market, you should report your CSR performance into the European market. If not, you cannot get into. So if then, how we can assess ESG? So ESG, as I've said, is all about turn theories and ideas into action. So turn CSR ideas into ESG investment. Investors are increasingly, but this is not the main thing, but I have to say increasingly applying these non-financial factors as part of their analysis process to identify managerial risk and growth opportunities. But still, ESG metrics are not commonly part of mandatory financial reporting. ESG reporting, ESG investment, ESG fund, and you are discussing a lot during these days. To be honest, ESG is not strategy. However, I know many companies, they are talking ESG as strategy. So let me make it clear. So how you can see this kind of all scattered word into one phenomenon. So how you can report ESG? As a first, the most important thing is you have to have CSR or sustainable management mission and vision and strategy. And then after that, by having this mission and vision and strategy, you can create the outcome. So UN SDGs is all about the goals and outcomes of your CSR and sustainable management mission and vision. So if then what are the ESGs? ESGs is reporting data in order to attract the investment. So don't panic, business people. Especially you are really good, as long as you are good and you feel confidence on your CSR mission and the CSR strategy. So make this as the data, rigorous data for your own company. So institutionalize this one. So if then whatever ESG data set, many people said how many, and still we don't know how many, still evolving, including World Bank also, they are talking about this, so I try to make the framework and the criteria. So many international organizations, they try to make this data set or criteria, but still ongoing, but don't panic again. So again, as long as you have a concrete mission over there, and then concrete data and goals by using UN SDGs, this is brilliant goals. If then you can collect your data and institutionalize them. If then whatever data set create criteria that you've been asked from whatever you mean, EU market or African market, you can make use of this concrete data set. So this is all about ESG. So if then what about current situation in relation to ESG issues? So I observed why, so let's say this is quite interesting. Why do you or your organization take ESG issues into consideration in your investment analysis decisions? There are two top motivations at first. The first one is they are talking this one as the management of investment risks. And second, is kind of response to clients and the society, and then investors' demands. Can you remember, as we've discussed at the CSR section, client and the consumers, and then during these days, investors, they've changed their views to the company from the profit maximization to the another this subjective themes. So that's why, during these days, especially many people, they demand to business to consider ESG in their performance, So if then I know many here is a student from Yonsei University. Many of you invest to stock, right? So let's try to see retail investors and the interest in ESG strategy. As you may observe, and I'm very happy to observe this data. Many young generations, they are considering and they are very interested in ESG strategy like this, young generations. So we can see the hope of our future. However, retail investors currently employing ESG strategy into their investment like this. It means young generation, although they think ESG is very, very important, however, when they decide their investment, still it's not enough. And still they think the potential, financial potential or financial performance of business. So if then, let's try to compare institutional investors and the retail investors, very different approach. In terms of institutional investors, they said, I expect ESG investing to result in higher risk adjusted return. But in terms of retail personal investors, they think, I want to express personal value due to their personal value, or invest in companies that I have a positive impact, which have a positive impact on society and the environment. So two difference. So if then, again, this is emerging topic, what are the outstanding issues? Although I'm very happy to see this kind of emerging discussion, very active discussion in Korean society or the world society, but what are the issues that you should tackle as a future business leaders? The first challenge on ESG discussion is, can we trust the data? And how we can analyze the data? What does that mean? How we can calculate this non-financial capitals? Is it possible? For example, how you can calculate intellectual capital, such as intellectual property, natural capital, such as carbon emissions, biodiversity, ecosystem health, and how can you calculate the social relationship capital, shared norms, and brand and reputations? How you can calculate the strategic capital, such as purpose, governance, culture. So no single rigorous assessment yet exists, while a few or many are still ongoing discussion. So some problems in relation to ESG data or real data. So especially soft data are hard to measure and express. and the relatively subjective, and then very, very big validity issues. So I would like to suggest you do not use this kind of soft ESG data for making an explicit and hard target. If then it looks very kind of you are now make a game or gaming or other, it raise very strong or very negative governance issues over there. And handle soft data with a full of appreciation of its influences and impact. So that's why you can observe here and there during these days, especially companies you are making or you are demonstrating instead of data, social impacts, including UN. And the investors have growing opportunities to put soft data and alternative data like this as an enhancement to overall data quality or to use such data in AI algorithm. So it's important, it's emerging. And then lastly, try to show the interaction of the three data sets. For example, when I had the interview with the Indian entrepreneur, Indian CEOs, for example, so it's quite surprising for me. They are, most of the CEOs, they are talking about CSR in relation to sewage, 하수처리장 disposal work. So I asked to myself, why? So sewage disposal work, for example, how you can analyze this with the ESG data set? Definitely it contribute to environment in India. And then at the same time, society to people. And also very strong commitment of the CEOs and then governance. So one data, but you can see its contribution to E and then S and G. So again, not to try to make ESG data as a hard, data, but soft data by emphasizing on social impact like this. So as you may observe, the last issue in relation to ESG data, a lot of washing issues. So when I was in America, in UC Berkeley, and they are talking about one of the critical issue in CSR is washing. For example, pink washing. So many companies, they try to promote their contribution to society with by beautiful color pink. Contribute to LGBT society and contribute to women, especially in suffering with breast cancer. However, their product and their contribution to society is not. And they use this beautiful color pink washing as a marketing strategy. Greenwashing is the same. You can observe here and there, even governments. They try to use this green color in order to promote their product without contribution to the society or without responsible production outcome or production process. So to show up to exaggeration, even manipulation by using washing techniques. So a lot of criticism on ESG washing, there is a missing E, missing ethical in ESG reporting and communication. So why don't you report in a much more ethical way beyond accomplishment? Luxurious, sustainable report is not needed, much more critical mind, and the future plan is important, is needed. However, whatever situation over there, but if the capitalist market are not ready for ESG data set or ESG evaluation, companies, they cannot make it by themselves. So again, according to my research, capitalist market should be changed or should be improved. Fund managers who make investment decision on behalf of dispersed investors still, as you see, continue to be rewarded based on how their investment performed related to the market. So how we can push CEOs and managers give up this kind of things and suddenly change their focus to environment, social, and government goals? We cannot do. So the society, especially capitalist society, should be improved and then should be changed. Finally, so what are the key takeaways and what we have to think about that, especially my dear young generation who are gathering here from Yonsei University and the Korean University, and then my dear student from Li츠메이칸 Asia Pacific University. So this is your turn. So how CSR ESG should go forward by considering what? So let me try to suggest to you 4 things. Try to make it or try to discuss it beyond news headline, beyond show up. So your inclusive leadership by taking all the ideas into your mission and commitment for the long term, not for the short term, is truly essential. Second, and the third and fourth, they are quite interacted. Try to improve our capitalist system. So if then we can encourage business to advance the evaluation system on ESG data, whatever ESG reporting. So we should have much more collaborate. This is not the responsibility for the business, but the responsibility of every jigsaw, every members in global capitalist society. So this is my conclusion. So as you may observe, you can see the global business in contemporary capitalism challenge of double assessment, unlike the previous kind of old days. The one is developing economy. At the same time, they have to develop society. Economic leadership you have to show, societal leadership you have to show. So you have to show or demonstrate inclusive leadership of business. Why not? ESG integration is really, really beautiful and a very appropriate direction. If then it will give you the opportunity and the growth, especially in a sustainable way. So prepare for the new normal, especially after COVID, and be ready with the CSR, ESG leadership. And especially all the best for Yonsei University students and all the best for my Korean friends. And then here is my book. And then Professor Song so kindly introduced this book to you. And if you would like to see more in-depth discussion, please refer to this book. And then my dear, foreign audience here, also I wrote CSR, especially comparative study of CSR between the global stage and Asia and Korea. So you can refer to this book. Thank you very much for your listening, and then look forward to your views and critical discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your interesting and energetic talk on ESG. And thank you for your insight into what we really need to know about ESG. 오늘 너무 좋은 ESG 강의 감사드립니다. Time is a little bit running over, but let's have a Q&A session about Professor Kim's wonderful lecture on this important topic. Ladies and gentlemen, you can ask questions directly through your microphone, or if you write questions or comments in the chat room, I will choose some of them and give it to Professor Kim. Any questions or comments? Okay, I think the audience will ask better questions than I do, but let me ask you first for warming up time for the audience to prepare their careers. As you already mentioned in the lecture, I want to ask you about your observation as a researcher. It must be challenging to get a simple, generalized answer because it's different from company to company, even in one cultural system. Is CSR and ESG a strategy to make more profit? Sometimes a strategy is to hide the dark side of the companies and to reduce taxes, or is it a sacrifice that can reduce profits? What do you think about it?
Thank you, Professor Song. This is one of the kind of provocative the question, and there are a lot of business people, especially, they consider this kind of critics, especially when they, bring their CSR ideas into their strategy and performance. Do we have any friends from India here? So when I observe, for example, when I observe the market in India is quite interesting. So many Indian business people, they are talking about CSR in relation to their spirit and their business theme. However, the government of India, they suggest the business to perform CSR as a way of tax. So you can see the Indian market, CSR is as a mandatory thing, not voluntary thing. So this is a way of tax. In terms of Indonesia, so Indonesia is a CSR is a very strong way of regulation, especially regulation for multinational companies. So many business people, they are in dilemma. So in order to get into the tax, or not to, a lot of foundation issues over there in order to getting the reduction of the tax. And the many business, they established a foundation in the here and there, also like this. But when it comes to the UK, so from my observation, the government, they have a little bit laissez-faire policy, I have to say. What is this? And they let business do whatever they want. So government, let's prepare this kind of stage, read encouragement. So much more facilitation. But as far as I understand, like this, direction to CSR and the discussion to CSR is quite divergent around the globe. So approach to CSR of business cooperation, for example, Samsung, your approach to CSR here in Korea and Japan and in the UK, in Bangladesh, it should be different. So that's why quite holistic and then dynamic idea towards CSR is truly needed. That's my recommendation. Thank you, Professor Song.
Okay, thank you. We have questions from Ms. or Mr. Nguyen Kyu Chi. Can you read the questions?
All right. So Ning Kyu Chi asked, the first one, as you mentioned, the CSR is kind of a critical standard response. CSR happens before or after the crisis. And second question is, what kind of competitive advantage the company can gain from investing in CSR? Very good question, Chi. So let me think about that. Before or after the crisis? Professor Song, what do you think? It's a very critical question. So why I think this question is truly valuable is, let's try to see company or business scandal here and there. Everybody, they can make a mistake, and the business also, they can make a mistake here and there. However, after the crisis, how they can deal with, after the scandal, how they can deal with this crisis in an ethical and responsible way. For example, in Korea, 땅콩회양 scandal, you mean Korea no-range scandal. Of course, business or business people, they can make a mistake. Yeah, it's quite normal. However, after the scandal, like she asked, how we can deal with this scandal, ethical and transparent way, and communicate with the shareholder and the stakeholder in the global village. I think this is very important. So I have to say to Chi, after the crisis scandal. And then what kind of competitive advantage the company can gain from investing in CSR? What kind of advantage? Also very good question. I have to say, you mean reputation and attract high caliber, you mean student here and there. And a lot of research, you can see link between CSR and financial performance. But I have to say it's a kind of middle, whether CSR truly linked to financial performance or nevertheless, it's not so much linked to financial performance. However, you should do that. You mean reiterate the stakeholder theory, normative, and then sometimes instrumental. So here, I think in the global market, there are two this kind of big discussion, whether in relation to CSR, the outcome, you mean, especially during these days, many companies, they are talking about CSR in relation to HRM, human resource management, to attract, retain, and to develop employees. Yeah, a lot of good things, but how it is linked directly still is in the discussion. Thank you, G, for your great question.
Okay. Another good question in the chat room.
Yep.
길현선 선생님 left a question.
Thank you. So 길현선 선생님 asked the question. Thank you for your comprehensive and informative lecture today for ESG. I'm also struggling to understand what a local branch of a global private company can do for governance part. Could you advise some example to improve governance part among ESG? Thank you. This is a very important question. And one of the key issue for us, especially for researchers, and then for the investors to bring the soft data into the hard data. So how governance can be the rigorous data. So from my observation, and then from my discussion with my colleagues here and there, as Professor Kier mentioned, this is still, the discussion is ongoing. And then how we can bring the governance data, especially, you mean how the ethical it is and how responsible it is, the governance system, organizational culture, and the decision-making system, into the social impact. So can you remember my discussion? So what I would like to suggest you, don't put governance index or governance part in a separate way when it compared to environment and society, even finance. Why don't you try to the linkage interaction between governance and which is quite influential to environmental and the society kind of directions. So if you, especially big business, you have a lot of, budget, you can manage this. But I know for small and medium-sized business, a lot of difficulties. If there is a strong international criteria over there, then what about small social and then small, medium-sized businesses? There are big, criticism over there. If then, why don't you go to your data, and then why don't you make your data, try to institutionalize this data for your company? That's my kind of suggestion. So this is related to my, to be honest, the last suggestion on CSR 선도기업. So how you can assess the data in relation to quantity? No. In relation to quality. As don't exaggerate, but by having your own data and your own criteria, you can lead regardless the size of your business. That's my suggestion. Hope it answered to your very critical question. Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Okay, if you have any more questions, I suggest that it would be good to buy this book by Professor Kim and read it. Before we wrap up the seminar, Professor Kim, could you give the audience one sentence take-home message to keep in mind, please?
One sentence.
Yes.
Okay.
It's very difficult.
It's very hard. One sentence is, I would like to suggest you don't panic. And this is not a new thing. And try to enjoy this pressure, ESG pressure or ESG suggestion to your development or improvement of your inclusive leadership. If then you will enjoy this new ESG phenomenon. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you so much again for your interesting and energetic talk on ESG. And thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, this is the end of today's seminar.
Yeah, Professor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I want to say hello to Professor Kim. I am Professor Young Park. Okay, I'm sitting in a room now. Okay. Anyway, thank you for your wonderful lecture today on CSR. I'm working as a chairman of IGE, already thinking about it's a quite complicated ideas under CSR, CSB, ESG, and SDG. But my final goal, already thinking about how to combine each other to pursue their better work. Okay, in that sense, you show some relationship on PPT, how to organize 17 goals based on 4 Ps. Okay, so what is your opinion on how to find out, figure out this kind of relationship among the CSR, CSB, ESG, and SDG? Okay. So in our university, we try to find a way to educate our students and research some agendas based on SDG. Okay, in that sense, we are going to broaden all kinds of ideas with CSR, CSB, and ESG. So I want to get some insight and your opinion or future collaboration, okay, with our institute to think about how to find out the relationship among these kinds of ideas. Anyway, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Bach. It's my great honor to meet you again, Professor Bach. Thank you. Thank you for hosting this. And as Professor Bach mentioned, the UN SDG goals is truly critical for us to materialize CSR or SDG or CSR and sustainable management or sustainable development into the real goal and actions. And Professor Bach, to be honest, last week I've discussed on SDGs with my student, and I did have this kind of competition. So for you as an individual, because UN SDG goals is not the goals for the university or not the goals of the business, and this is the goal for whole global society. So all members of global society, they can contribute to UN SDG goals. Not the whole goals, 17 goals is too much, but you can make a focus and then you can strategize for your individual goals. So that's what I've discussed with my school student. It was tremendous. So hope not only the business but also young generation, 청춘들, 한국의 청춘들, and the generation around the globe. Why don't you discuss and then ponder on UN SDGs for yourself? If then when you go out of the university, it will be easier for you to bring the UN SDGs goals into the business leadership. Because for example, when you go to Samsung, when you go to Shell, when you go to Tata or Toyota, your approach to UN SDG goals will be different. According our discussion, according to the culture, institutional background, according to the divergence of capitalist society or programs. So you should be very flexible, but you can play with UN SDG goals wherever you are. So you can show your inclusive leadership. So hope my school and the Yonsei University can collaborate for the future leaders in order to disseminate UN SDG goals. Truly appreciate Professor Park. Thank you.
This is the end of today's seminar, but at the same time, another memorable starting point of collaboration for a better ESG and CSR practices. It was great to have you, Professor Kim, for today's seminar. 네, 오늘 이것으로 오늘 G4 세미나를 마치는데 지금 세미나는 마치지만 우리가 ESG와 CSR을 직접 실천하는 더 중요한 의미 있는 출발점이 아닌가 생각하고 우리 김정희 교수님 모실 수 있어서 너무 기뻤습니다. And I thank all the participants again for being with us today, and I hope to see you again at the next G4 seminar, probably in late July on food security with collaboration with the UN World Food Program. Until then, please stay safe and healthy. Thank you very much.